Okay. In tactics, he starts talking about the different. Well, okay, let me just read what he put. He summed it up the best. Tactics means doing what you can with what you have. Tactics are those consciously deliberate acts by which human beings live with each other and deal with the world around them. So it's pretty much what you do in order to fulfill his goals, right? And by using what he has, though, not trying to get more, or just with the bare minimum of what you have, what change can you make? And so he has a list again, and the first one is power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have.
So like, even if you don't have that much, if you can make the enemy think you have a lot, like in The Princess Bride, when he's pretending to be the Dread Pirate Roberts, and they think it's like big and scary, but it's really not.
It's not, right? And then the second rule: never go outside the experience of your people, because the result is confusion, fear, and retreat, which is what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
They have to understand what you're saying to them. I mean, not
yeah,
just like
it comes down to communication.
Yeah.
Like everything basically comes down to communication. So.
Yeah, and he also says wherever possible, go outside of the experience of the enemy, which makes perfect sense. You want to cause confusion and fear in them, so
they won't know what to do. They won't be able to organize.
Exactly. So
you'll have the upper hand.
You have to disable them instead. And the fourth is make the enemy live up to their own book of rules.
I didn't get what that meant. Like, what does that mean?
Because a lot of times these people who have, well, like the haves, they have this code, this rule that, especially, that's usually what we're trying to break or what we're trying to change, are the rules that they set forth. So a lot of times the rules are contradictory, or they just don't make sense. So when they have rules like that, we use that against them. Well, your rule book says this, yeah, well, your laws say this, but then they also say this. So, like, you can use the laws against them, because a lot of times they don't even follow their own laws, and they don't.
Okay.
Yeah. The fifth one was ridicule is man's most potent weapon.
We went over that a little bit in the previous chapter, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, it just angers them to no extent. It's just hilarious for us and really aggravating for them. And a good tactic is one that your people enjoy, which kind of coincides. Like, I'm gonna have fun making fun of this guy,
yeah,
and he's gonna hate it, and he's gonna get all riled up and make some mistakes, And the seventh rule: a tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag, which is true. I mean, if you're boycotting, like he said, after a while you're like, okay, I really need to buy that. Like I'm gonna need that sooner or later. Or maybe, like after a while without it, you're just like, seriously, this isn't fun anymore. I want to stop. And so that push, that effort that you really need behind it, just kind of melts away. And then once again, and then to back that up, the eighth rule is keep the pressure on.
With different tactics and actions. So like that comes back to being creative and curious.
Yeah, you need to keep it changing and enjoyable and
interesting. And like keep them on their feet.
Right, and so that way it's easier to topple them over. Then the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself.
That comes back to, I guess, like power is not what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, a lot of times just making a threat will get the job done. He does a lot of examples of those later on. And the major premise for tactics is the development of operations that will maintain a constant pressure upon the opposition. So keep the pressure on. It's kind of the same thing, I think. Like you can't give in at any point. Really like show no mercy, and just keep them going until they break or change for you. The 11th rule is if you push a negative hard, and deep enough it will break through into its counterside. And so here he starts to talk about passive resistance and how Gandhi used it, and how it's pretty much every positive has its negative, and so you use the positive until the negative side breaks through, or the opposite way around. And his example was pretty cool because he talked about when he was burglarized, and then they took all of the folders that had to do with their own corporation. So it was pretty obvious who did it.
Yeah.
So it was like they found something positive out of that negative. And the 12th one is the price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. And so sometimes what I got from this was like when you're negotiating or when you're trying to prove your point, sometimes they're like, okay, well, what if we do this? And although it's an alternative, and like so you want to take it because they're kind of changing, but a lot of times it's kind of a trap and they're not really changing anything. It's like that false generosity thing, you know? So you have to be careful to not fall into those kinds of things and really stick to your guns. And the 13th one was pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. That was kind of intense. He gave a long example of this rule. So he's saying like you can't just go after all of that's what I got was like you can't just go after all of the different problem areas. Like you have to find one, you have to pick it, and you have to phrase it, and you have to personalize it and make everyone self-interested in it, and then you have to polarize it and kind of and get everyone to kind of rally behind you or with you. So he has an extended example here. Well, the one part that confused me the most was the polarization part. He says on 133, with this focus comes a polarization. As we have indicated before, all issues must be polarized if action is to follow. The classic statement on polarization comes from Christ. He that is not with me is against me. One acts decisively only in the conviction that all the angels are on one side and all the devils on the other side. So pretty much, like you have to be completely sure, like this is the right. And although the leader may like kind of sway and like, like really weigh the different perspectives or different decisions, the people that are doing it have to be in their minds and hearts 100% convinced that they're doing the right thing, or else they're not going to go through with it. Because if you don't polarize, then there won't be action, and then it'll just be the reflection without action, and there'll be no point to any of it.
It'll be like, so it's like maybe this is, but like maybe it's not.
Right.
Is that it?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, well, what he's saying is when you polarize it, you have to make sure, like.
So it's definite sides.
Yeah. You can't kind of like be wishy-washy about it. You have to figure it out. And although the leader will first be wishy-washy probably, but once he decides, he has to make a decisive action, and that has to be it. Because if he's weak about it, and then it'll all just fall apart. The organization won't survive it. So the rest of it, it's a lot about the different examples that he gives of when he organized places and people, and one that I thought was really funny was the O'Hare airport. They decided that they would have people lock the bathrooms and cause like mass hysteria because everyone has to use the restroom and there's none open. So that was a pretty intense threat, and I would expect that would lead to lots of bad things because just seeing a Walmart when the bathroom is being cleaned and all the people were like freaking out. You can imagine what an airport must be like after people have been on like hours long flights. So I thought that was interesting and entertaining and kind of scary. I would not want to be one of those people getting off the plane. And then I also liked this one where they're kind of like turning the stereotype around on page 144, where he says, "Then let us take one of the negative stereotypes that so many whites have of blacks. That blacks like to sit around eating watermelon." And so he says, if we have 3,000 blacks suddenly just sitting in the city eating watermelon, people will probably freak out, you know? Yeah. And then they'll kind of maybe
reevaluate the stereotype, because if you're freaking out, it's not prevalent.
Yeah, it's not something that usually happens. So they'll kind of see that and, you know, maybe change their view or ideas. I thought it was hilarious though, because if I was a protester, I would totally do that. I would just go sit and eat watermelon. And because like to me the O'Hare airport thing seemed I would feel bad for like the little kids who like have to go potty.
I was thinking that too.
I would be like, okay, he can come. And I would like cheat. But if it's just sitting there eating watermelon,
yeah,
I would be totally cool with that. I would. And
making a stir and getting watermelon out of it.
Exactly. So spit some seeds, maybe some watermelons will grow. I don't know. I liked that one a lot. And he talks about the competition between the halves, starting in the 148. He's talking about I know he's giving more examples here again. He's talking about the different automobile, Chevrolet and Ford and all of them, and how like it's on 150, the one I'm looking at. I'm trying to remember like kind of a summary of this because it's kind of longer, but let's see, on page 151 he talks about an example of boycotting department stores during Christmas, and it was a failure because
I wanted to boycott all the stores instead of just a few of them.
Yeah. See what he says, any attack against the status quo must use the strength of the enemy against itself. He says that 151. Like he said, if you just like if you have Walmart and then like I don't know, Target across the road, well if you just boycott Walmarts, then everyone's gonna go to the Target because they don't want to have to like deal with all the picket people and protesters standing there.
Yeah.
So then Walmart will be
lose money.
It'll lose money, and it'll see them gaining money, so they'll want to change it because you know like instead of everyone being in the same boat, then it just kind of like it's not as big of an incentive to change. And you said your computer's quite low, right?
It's so gotten better.
So their own petard. I was kind of confused by this. Did you understand?
What is a petard?
I don't understand either. I was gonna look that up. I didn't get a chance to.
A mass political jujitsu.
Do you know what jujitsu is?
Some sort of form of martial arts, I think.
That's what I thought too, but I couldn't remember like.
I can't remember. Like it was in Naruto, but like Naruto could just be using the word jujitsu.
It was in Ninja Turtles.
Oh, so well, it's Japanese. We know that.
We got that part.
Okay, so.
Yeah. But they were singing and dancing when they said it, so I know. They weren't being serious. I was like, when I read it, I heard the Ninja Turtle say jujitsu, and I was like, I've heard it, but what does it mean?